It's the midst of the Second World War, and the United States Navy is scrambling to gain an upper hand against German U-boats and seize control of the maritime arena. One of their goals was to render their naval fleets invisible, allegedly by harnessing the power of electromagnetism. And in October of 1943, this experiment was put to the test. While moored at the Philadelphia shipyard, the USS Eldridge underwent the pilot attempt with disastrous outcomes. This is the story of both the legend and reality of what happened. In 1943, and Germany has proven to be a wartime powerhouse, seizing land, sea, and air. The Allied forces struggled to keep abreast of the Axis armies, and initially at least, the Axis technological advances were years ahead. Strategic footholds with blitzkrieg armies, 88mm equipped Tiger tanks, the Luftwaffe, and one of the most menacing Axis threats, the introduction of the German U-boat, or submarine. Merchant ships and destroyers, entire fleets were being laid to waste by a single U-boat. They were very difficult to detect, invisible to radar unless surfaced, and virtually invisible to sonar. A highly maneuverable fox in the henhouse was able to sneak into the midst of entire fleets undetected and unleash a flurry of torpedoes amidst the scrambling warships, which were typically too close together to launch effective counterattacks. As Allied fleets began to dwindle in numbers, among many other countermeasures, the United States began their own journey down intelligent marine defense, and among the many experiments and advances is perhaps one of the most notorious alleged experiments within United States history, the Philadelphia experiment. As the legend goes, in October of 1943, the USS Eldridge was moored at the Philadelphia shipyard, manned with a skeleton crew, sworn to secrecy about the experiment they were allegedly about to undertake, attempting to render the Eldridge invisible. Unannounced, but ready for the pilot test, there is reportedly a loud hum as the experiment began. The Eldridge was engulfed in a strange green glow before suddenly vanishing. It would appear instantly over 300 miles away in Virginia, before rematerializing moments later back in the Philadelphia shipyard. However, upon its return, not all was okay on board. Crew was reportedly disorientated, with some in hysteria. Other crew had materialized in the ship's bulkhead, alive but fused with the destroyer, and others were simply nowhere to be found. The legend is indeed fascinating, and the technology is something I think we would all like to believe is in the least possible. However, the truth is far less captivating and is seated in the heart of conspiracy and lunacy. The story of the Philadelphia experiment itself would not be mentioned until years after the alleged incident in 1955, when Carl Meredith Allen, who by then went by the name of Carlos Miguel Allende, sent an annotated copy of the book, The Case for UFOs by Morris K. Jessup, to the ONR, or Office of Naval Research. The book cited Einstein's unified theory and electromagnetism as the backbone for Jessup's own theories, suggesting that extraterrestrial life had harnessed the power of both as a means of transportation, and the annotations seemed to support his ideas. The notes were seemingly made by 3 different authors, and strangely, at least one of the writers claimed to be of extraterrestrial origin. Stranger still is that the ONR took an interest in the annotated book, and very quickly had over 100 copies printed through a military distributor, Varro Manufacturing, and was passed throughout the ranks. Allende would start sending letters to Jessup himself beginning in January of 1956, eventually sending him a copy of the annotated book as well. The letters were fanatical and sometimes nonsensical, both supporting and refuting Jessup's theories. Carlos claimed to be taught by Einstein himself, and claimed to be able to prove the unified theory as correct, ultimately claiming to be witness to the theory in action, the disappearance of the USS Eldridge from a Philadelphia shipyard in October of 1943. Allende claimed to be a seaman on a neighboring destroyer, the USS Furuseth, in the Philadelphia shipyard as the experiment took place, citing the green glow and bulkhead-fused crewmen. He urged Jessup to stop his research into the unified theory, claiming the fate of the world was at stake if he did not. Jessup himself became obsessed with the letters, and even tried tracking Allende down, coming to multiple dead ends. Specifically, the return address for the letters led to an abandoned storefront. Sadly, driven mad by the mystery of the annotated book, Jessup would take his own life on April 20th, 1959, mailing his friend Long John Neville a suicide letter explaining why. The reality is that the experiment never took place, at least how Allende suggested. Carl Allen was indeed deployed on the Furuseth as he claimed, and was moored in the shipyard during the dates he suggested, being posted there on July 1st after his seaman training at Hoffman Island in New York. However, the Eldridge was never moored at the shipyard during the alleged dates. The Eldridge was commissioned in 1942, and construction was completed in June of that year. It ran sea trials in Bermuda before making its way to New York, where it embarked on a series of escort runs, accompanying wartime merchant vessels across the Atlantic. The invisibility cloaking that Allen suggested is partially born from fact, although the actual experiment was titled Project Rainbow and utilized a well-known technique called degaussing. This is a method of neutralizing a ship's magnetic field by encircling the hull with a conductor carrying electrical currents, rendering magnetically guided torpedoes and mines ineffective. The green glow that was reported could be explained away by a natural phenomenon called St. Elmo's fire, a coronal discharge that creates lightning-like plasma storms that can also charge the atmosphere with a green or blue glow. None of the crew on board have ever admitted to the experiment, and the ship data logs support their omissions. Allende would perpetuate his claims for decades, giving many interviews and appearing on a multitude of talk shows, despite being recognized as a known eccentric who had been admitted more than once for mental issues. June of 1969, Carl Meredith Allen, Carlos Miguel Allende, would finally admit that the annotations in Jessup's book were all made by him and him alone, with the goal of simply driving Jessup crazy. Allen had hoped that Jessup would stop writing about electromagnetism, as Allen feared supernatural side effects from its study. It would not be until 1986, while Allende was on his deathbed, that he would admit the Philadelphia experiment was a hoax, although Carl would pull through and not pass away until years later, on March 5th, 1994. Thank you for watching. This is the pilot episode for this series, and a sort of trial run to see if I will do more. Your support for both this channel and the episode are greatly appreciated. If you liked what you saw and want to see more, please do like, comment, and hit that subscribe button. This way, it will ensure I will return to complete the series. I have my own channel under LPR Presents, but it's of a different genre, something I've coined long-form deep-dive cinematic true crime. You can find me by typing LPR Presents in the search bar for YouTube. Of course, your support there would also greatly be appreciated. Thank you once again for joining me, and I hope to see you again. for the next episode of Something Strange.